Today on Inside Utah Politics, local restaurants have been hit hard by the pandemic. We're checking in with Utah Restaurant Association to discuss the impact and what can be done to keep them afloat. And what would bring Utah Senator Mike Lee and New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez together? They say the American people should know exactly what's in a bill before it's passed. Our panel weighs in.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics, and we do begin today with Melva Sine. She is with the Utah Restaurant Association. Melva, great to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.
Let's get right into the pandemic impact. The industry has really been hit hard. Talk about and give us a picture of the overall impact on the industry here in Utah.
Okay, so to start with, prior to the pandemic, the restaurant industry in the state of Utah had $6.5 billion worth of sales in 2019. This year we will have losses of $2.8 billion up and through September. So we still have October, November, and December to count into that, but it has been crushing for the industry.
Yeah, it's been so bad that we've seen community staples that have been around for decades closing the doors.
Yes, it's hit the catering industry hard, who depends on events and large gatherings. It has crushed restaurants who have been in business for years, 40 years. We're losing restaurants that have been, our favorites and who we turn to and have been around for 40 years. And it's a sad tale that these people have spent their entire lives, and now they're losing their business.
Canella's would be an example, Red Butte would be another, and there are so many more. The restaurant industry really tried to mobilize and make some adjustments to make things safe. Talk about what's being done in area restaurants to make sure that people are able to come in safe when they do come in for indoor dining.
So Glenn, the restaurant industry is the second most regulated industry in America. And so we have always had sanitizing and all of the cleaning and wearing gloves and doing those types of things. That has always been a standard for the restaurant industry. Once the pandemic was upon us, everything was enhanced. So sanitizing wasn't occurring every 4 hours, it was occurring after every customer. People are wearing gloves, people are washing their hands. These have always been staples in the restaurant industry. So it's all enhanced, and it's a constant ongoing measure. Masks, everyone is wearing masks, whether they're in the front of the house or the back of the house.
What are you seeing in regards to people being willing to come dine in, or those who are just ordering takeout? What are you seeing there? Explain that to us. Well,
so prior to the pandemic, it was estimated that there would be a large trending towards takeout and delivery as we see third-party delivery companies develop and grow in the state. And so that was already going to be a trending pattern and part of our growth for 2020. However, now people have turned to that to survive, and so it's not just a trending, it will be ongoing. So takeout, curbside delivery, all of those will be a part of the regular restaurant scene after the pandemic is over.
You make the argument that dining in may be even more safe than eating at home. Explain that.
Yeah, and so when we talk about public spaces, a restaurant is a public space, and so we follow all of the guidelines that are being put out by the health departments throughout the state, as well as the Utah State Health Department. So if they say 6-foot distancing, we 6-foot distance. If they say wear masks, we wear masks, whatever guidelines they're giving. And so that doesn't always occur in a person's home. You don't always sanitize as much as you should. You don't necessarily wear masks. You certainly may not 6-foot distance. And so when you're at home, some of these, we let our guard down a little bit. When you're out in the community and out enjoying a meal in a restaurant, we're helping you to comply and have a safe experience while you're in our restaurants.
Still, people look at that and say, you know what, at this time, it's just not a risk I'm willing to take. As far as data goes, what are we seeing in restaurants when it comes to the spread of COVID-19?
So by the numbers, Glenn, Utah was trending upwards. So we had, as of the end of April, we were from 109,000 employees down to 63,000 employees. And after we back opened up in May, right after Mother's Day, then restaurants started to build back. And by the end of September, 1st of October, we were back to 93,000 employees. So by the numbers, people want to go out and enjoy a dining experience. And the fact that we were able to increase our numbers that quickly was amazing.
But as far as spread taking place in restaurants of
Yes.
the virus, what do you know there?
So data-wise, from what we've seen and what is being announced for New York is 1.43% of all of the cases may come from restaurants. We've not seen data or figures in the state of Utah that indicate that the restaurant industry has anything to do with the spread of COVID, and that all of the guidance that we are following is helping to make sure that that does not occur in the restaurant industry.
Let's talk about some potential solutions to help struggling business owners stay afloat. One would be the COVID relief bill. At time of recording, it was in limbo after the president came out and said he was not willing to sign it as is. What's your thought on this particular bill? Is it a good thing for the restaurant industry?
So it's not an end-all, because we need much more help than what this will provide. But this is a very strong bridge to help us survive till we can get to the next level of our need. When you've lost $2.8 billion and upwards, then you need a lot of assistance. It's not something restaurants want to ask for, assistance, but it's something that's absolutely necessary now if we're going to see the industry survive and grow.
And what about on a local level? Are there things that you're pushing for that could potentially change that might be able to help out in this situation?
So we asked for a relief fund clear back in April. We have not seen at the state level a relief fund for the restaurant industry at large. And so we're still asking and pushing and helping legislators to understand that there is a process here that we need their involvement with funding to help keep the spark going, to help keep these restaurants with hope and encouragement that they can get through this.
Another thing that I noticed you were pushing for were alcohol-to-go sales. How could that potentially impact the industry?
Yes, so people enjoy having a beverage when they have a meal in our restaurants, and so being able to provide that to them, whether they're in their home and ordering or picking up or doing takeout, would actually put dollars in the pockets of our restaurant owners. So you see many restaurants and bars right now who are selling mixed drinks without the alcohol, just so that they prepare the mixer, they prepare everything for you, and you just get it home and then add the alcohol of your choice. But that's not an end-all for us, and that's not a cure. What we need to be able to do is sell alcohol so that we have actual dollars coming in.
Mm-hmm. So you already mentioned that you believe takeout is going to be a big part of the restaurant industry, even post-pandemic. But what are some other things that might stick? Do you think that some of these increased sanitation guidelines will continue to stick after the pandemic as well?
Well, as I say, they were here before, so we've enhanced them, and I think that enhancement will stay. You will see people sanitize more frequently, more often. They'll continue to have hand sanitizer available in their restaurants for consumers and patrons to use. Employees are encouraged to wash your hands, then use the hand sanitizer. These are all policies that have been a part of the restaurant industry with the Food and Drug Administration guidelines.
Okay, Melva Sign with the Utah Restaurant Association. I know that industry's been hit very hard by this pandemic. Thanks for the conversation. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Glenn.
Coming up, the COVID relief bill passed by Congress was more than 5,000 pages long, impossible for lawmakers to even read through before voting. Our panel weighs in on that a little later. But first, top experts in the U.S. raising concerns about the COVID mutation spreading in the U.K. That story coming up after the break. Welcome back. A newly discovered strain of the coronavirus has prompted shutdowns and travel restrictions across Europe. Scientists say the mutated virus found in the United Kingdom may be spreading faster. Washington correspondent Raquel Martin reports as White House public officials say they're not shocked by the discovery. They do warn it could come here next.
We could have that same type of escape mutant here.
Dr. Deborah Birx warns a newly discovered and possibly more contagious strain of the coronavirus could soon make it to the U.S.
Do Americans need to be worried?
We really need to be vigilant, to be watching for this. But what we do know is we know we can prevent transmission.
Early research shows the new strain of COVID discovered in England spreads faster, but there is so far no evidence it's more deadly.
All the vaccine manufacturing companies are looking very closely to see if this particular strain is still, the vaccine is still effective against that.
For now, Birx says those who can should get vaccinated immediately.
These vaccines are going to save so many lives.
Tuesday, Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar and Dr. Anthony Fauci became the latest officials to publicly take a shot in the arm.
I feel extreme confidence in the safety and the efficacy of this vaccine.
But Michigan Democratic Senator Debbie Stabenow says she remains concerned about the vaccine supply in her state and others. She hopes billions in new funding from the latest COVID relief package will help.
This is an ongoing effort that needs to be addressed to get the job done.
It really needs to get to all of our frontline healthcare providers.
Birx says the goal remains to have 20 million Americans vaccinated by the end of the month. Although the most optimistic schedules predict most Americans will not get their vaccine until the spring or summer. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
Inauguration Day is less than a month away, and a South Carolina congressman is taking the lead on planning. Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer shares how this year's inauguration will look a little different than years past.
No crowds or large celebration. Next month's inauguration is going to be unlike any other.
And I've watched these things for a long, long time. Then all of a sudden, you get to cheer it, and you're in the middle of a pandemic. Let me tell you what's that like.
President-elect Joe Biden's longtime friend, South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, is in charge of planning the inauguration during a global pandemic. Clyburn says he's had to tell his own family and friends asking him for tickets to stay home.
There will be no tickets for the public. There will be only one ticket for members of Congress.
Clyburn tells me he isn't just asking members of his family to stay home. He's asking all Americans not to travel to Washington, D.C.
You can stay at home in your pajamas and be warm.
Clyburn says the January 20th inauguration will be similar to this summer's Democratic National Convention, largely online. Biden's inauguration isn't the only thing going virtual.
Hi, Donald John Trump.
President Trump's supporters are planning their own virtual second inauguration on the same day. The president is still fighting to overturn the election results, and more than 25,000 of his fans have joined this private Facebook group. No word on if President Trump plans to attend either event, in person or online. Reporting in Washington, I'm Kelly Meyer.
Coming up, the COVID relief bill passed by Congress is bringing unlikely partnerships together, why some are saying the process needs reform. Our panel weighs in on that next.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Time now to check in with the Inside Utah Politics panel. This week we have State Representative Brian King and former Hinckley Institute Director Kirk Jowers. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Glenn.
Let's get into this COVID deal. A lot to unravel here, but I want to start with a big issue that has been such for years before today, and that is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Lee coming together. That doesn't happen often. But they're saying it's not good enough to hear about what's in the bill. Members of Congress need to see it and read it. And boy, we saw it play out in this one with a 5,000+ page bill. All right, where do we even start with this? Brian, describe the potential conflict and problem here.
It's inherent to the process. What you're looking at, are, especially when you're talking about complex, big issues and problems, where there are deadlines and timeframes, where people need to be helped quickly. You have a ton of issues that need to be worked out between a body. Well, when you look at Congress, it's over 400 members, and they need to get worked out quickly, and they need to do it in a very complex, interrelated way. It's hard to do this in a way that allows every member of Congress, or 500 people actually, to get there, to read it and understand it and feel comfortable voting on it. We deal with the same thing to a lesser extent in the legislature. You put timelines in place, you try and make bills a certain size, you try and put time buffers in place to after a vote's introduced, before it can be voted on. Those are all helpful, but they're not foolproof.
Kirk, takes us back to the infamous statement from House Speaker Pelosi the first time around, when she said something along the lines of, you have to pass the bill to find out what's in it. That just does not sit well with the American people.
No, it doesn't. And like Brian said, I mean, they're absolutely right in theory, and it goes with my other theory that anytime you get kind of two polar opposites together, like an AOC and a Mike Lee, and they agree, it's probably pretty close to divine truth, kind of like when RBG and Scalia were on the same side of a court case. Like, okay, that was probably a dumb one for that losing attorney to bring if you get those two. But in reality, this bill should have been passed weeks, months ago to provide the relief America needs. And so it is a little messy. Of course, this has been worked on for months, and so you've had subcommittees, you've got staffers. I mean, people have written it, people have read it, and they're relied upon by their legislators. So it's probably not as big of an emergency as it seems, but it's certainly not ideal, because one sentence, one word can really do a lot of damage or change a lot of the intent.
Former Utah Representative Mia Love actually introduced a bill when she was in office on this very issue, making it so that it would just be one single issue that a bill tackles. That is more along the lines, Representative, what you do at the state capitol. Yeah. Is that a potential solution?
I think it helps. I think it helps. It's no guarantee, though. I mean, we have really complex bills that come down with very little time for us to read them at the legislature, and it's a source of frustration, especially when you get to the end of the session. There's a hard deadline after which you just run into a brick wall and you can't do anything else. My motto, more and more, as the longer I've been at the legislature, is I'm more inclined to vote no on a bill the closer we get to the end of the day, in the end of the 45-day session, if it's a complex bill that people haven't had a chance to vet thoroughly. Give the benefit of the doubt to something that could be in there that you don't like and just vote no. That's an alternative. But the problem here, of course, is that with COVID, people are really suffering. You need to get something passed if it's possible.
Okay, Kirk, the president putting this in limbo at time of recording, that was still the case. He called this bill a disgrace, saying that it spends too much money in foreign countries and on things like museums and not enough in the pockets of the American people. What do you make of the president's point?
He may well be right on some of those points, and of course Nancy Pelosi immediately said, yeah, you're right, great, let's just get that done and put $2,000 in everyone's pocket. To me, it's a lack of leadership of President Trump. If he wanted that, he should have. That's a place where there certainly were numbers to go along that route. He could have had influence when a week ago, a month ago, even a few days ago. I think at this point, it passed by a veto-proof majority, and it needs to happen. And I think McConnell and Pelosi will just override him, and we'll get what we've got.
Representative, President-elect Joe Biden is saying himself, look, this is a start, but there's still more work that needs to happen.
Yeah, there is. I think that you've got to recognize the economic impact of COVID. And in the end, what we've got to do is make sure that the economy is not going to be tanked by the detrimental economic impact. So, you can call it stimulus spending, you can call it spending for those who are in the greatest need, whatever you call it. If we want the economy to be able to plow through this until the vaccines are in place and we're back up to 100%, you're going to have a way of keeping, especially those who are most vulnerable, from losing their homes, from losing their apartments, from losing their ability to make ends meet. And if you don't do that, then you're going to have real economic consequences. The Congress members do have the votes to override President Trump's veto. And he is not a team player on this. As Kirk said, he should have been involved in this process long ago if he really felt strongly about $2,000 going to every
What about
person.
Kirk's point, though, that Democrats are saying, yeah, we're on board with that. Let's get it done.
Well, yeah, I mean, Donald Trump is not a team player. He doesn't care about how that affects the Republicans. And in fact, that's going to divide the Republican Party in a way that for people who follow Trump loyally, they're going to say, yeah, what is wrong with Mitch McConnell and the Republicans that they're not willing to authorize $2,000 when the Democrats are the ones who have been much more in line with some of the things that Donald Trump has been saying.
Okay.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on Republicans for whatever Joe Biden wants to do next, because if that's part of the equation, that Biden wants to get more money into Americans' hands, now he's got an unlikely ally in at least that point of the new bills that will come out.
Yeah, good point there. Let's move on to the Georgia Senate runoff. A ton at stake. I mean, we're talking the balance of power in the Senate and really in Washington, D.C. for that matter, because if it does swing, then Democrats will have the presidency and both chambers. All right, Representative, let's start with you. Assess what's going on from the Democratic side there. Can you pull off those seats?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know. I think it's an uphill fight. You're not likely to have the big turnout in Georgia for the special election that you had in the general election, and I think that's one of the things that may hurt the Democrats' ability to get this, to win both those seats. They've got two strong candidates. One of the things, though, that hurts the Republicans is, again, it gets back to Donald Trump not being clearly focused on what he needs to accomplish here. He needs to accomplish 2 Republican wins in Georgia, and quite honestly, I don't know that he cares that much. He's much more interested in airing his own personal election grievances and talking about how there's been fraud in the election. Well, that's not the ideal way to get your Republican base to turn out, is by telling them that there's been fraud in the Georgia election in the general.
Kirk, talk about that. What impact might that have on the 2 incumbent Republicans?
Initially, it was having a huge impact. You looked at the polling, and a lot of Republicans were saying they wouldn't vote in these most important elections in the history of the state of Georgia, at least on a nationwide basis, because of the perceived election fraud and other things that Trump had said. Republicans there have done a good job of kind of pulling people off of that, and that you do need to vote if you want to keep control. Fortunately for the Republicans, they only need to win one of those 2. And Purdue seems to be, again, no one's too confident in polling and anything else that's going on anymore these days, but Purdue looks to be in pretty good shape. The other one's a complete nobody knows, but if Republicans win one of the 2, they get the prize. They keep the Senate. McConnell keeps a check on Biden. And that's where we are.
Yeah, Purdue was actually just barely even pushed to this runoff in the general election, so that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Brian, are you confident you can pick up 2 seats there?
Oh, I think it's very, if you said bet your mortgage on this, I would say it's tough for me to feel good about betting my mortgage on 2 Democratic wins down in Georgia, which is about as closely aligned a state as we had in the general election for the presidential. So I think there's a lot that's unknown right now. I think it depends on which party gets out their base and their voters and really motivates people to come out. That'll be the party that likely wins.
Okay, and Kirk, I think I heard you say you're pretty confident Republicans keeping at least one of those seats.
Because I'm not going to lose my mortgage, I'll say I would bet my mortgage that Republicans get at least 1. I would not bet on 2. But it looks pretty strong they'll get 1, and money's not going to be an issue. I mean, they will have spent, the estimates some have go up to $500 million on this special election, which is just insane.
And that's money coming in from all across the country. Gentlemen, great conversation. Appreciate you being here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with more Inside Utah Politics right after the break. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. State Inauguration Day is coming up. Elected leaders will take the oath of office on Monday, January 4th. The general legislative session gets underway a few weeks after that. Opening day is Tuesday, January 19th, and the presidential inauguration is Wednesday, January 20th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Just log on and search Glenn Mills, ABC4. Thanks so much for making us part of your day. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.